Alrighty, we are headed to the store right now, or the site at least. The store is not built yet. Going to meet up with our civil engineer. I got to give him a check. I also have not met him in person yet, but he's been working for a couple weeks. If you don't know, the civil engineer is the person or firm who does all the initial engineering for the site itself. They call it the site plan. So they're responsible for how, when it rains, how does the water disperse so it doesn't flood. Depending on this, what kind of contract you do with your civil engineer, they could tackle a couple different things, but usually, irrigation, landscaping. Usually cities or municipalities have different rules on how many shrubs or trees have to be around, as well as the foundation, pouring the concrete, the traffic flow, the turn radius of the drive-through. All these very foundational level things is what the civil engineer does. And it's where every project starts when you're building. So I'm going to meet him in person for the first time, so that would be good. But I thought while I was driving, I'll give you 2 little tips that I've learned from starting a business. These are the things that I did not learn in entrepreneurship school or business school, and it's very difficult, and it's a major hurdle when you're starting a business, and that's legal. That's lawyer fees, attorney fees, legal structure, setting up your business, things of that nature. So I'm going to give you a couple tips if you're building a business on a budget, which everyone who's starting a business is usually, unless you're in tech and you're raising VC. So I spent a lot of time really understanding the corporate structure side of things in C corps, S corps, LLCs, all these things. You hear this jargon a lot. It's one of the first things actually that how to start your own business intro videos go over, is these different legal structures. What I recommend, and I recommend doing this for any new subject you're learning, is you spam beginner videos. You watch like a dozen intro videos so you can get the broad scope of the foundational knowledge of whatever you're trying to learn. And I'll tell you that's not going to be anywhere close to enough knowledge of what you're going to need to set up a business structure if you're building a business that you want to scale. If you are selling a CPG product, like you're selling salsas, or you're selling tea in a store, or something smaller, not to belittle it, any business is that creates jobs and makes something good is absolutely worthwhile. But that will probably be easier. But if you're trying to create a business that can scale, like is Roadrunners, and you want to raise money, and you want to make sure that you're not going to lose control of your business, you need to pay a lot of attention to the legal structure. Doing all this gets extremely complicated, but you can do a lot of it for free. So that was a really long preamble, but basically here are a couple tools I recommend. Use the SCORE network. SCORE is an acronym, SCORE. If you live in the United States, every city has them. Houston has one of the biggest chapters in the country. And you can get yourself a mentor. You can get yourself a mentor for any area of business. I will say, legal is the only area where I have had a good experience with SCORE. The rest of the mentors were just basically like rich guys who went the career path, and then they wanted to go mentor people getting into entrepreneurship, which is really confusing. And I went through many different mentors of SCORE and never found a good one. So it's situational, but I found an incredible SCORE mentor as far as legal goes, and she literally helped me. She probably put in 15 hours, maybe more, of work for me. Now, SCORE is not allowed to just do work for you. So we would get on a Zoom call, and she would talk me through everything, and I'd be editing the legal document myself and asking questions and learning along the way, which is a better way to do it anyway. You don't want to own businesses and employ people if you don't understand the legal side of your rights and their rights and the structure and everything. But SCORE network was amazing. I used Law Depot. It's a website It's free for templates, for fundraising documents, for operating agreements, all these things. And that helped me a lot. I ended up paying for the paid version of Law Depot at a certain point. I don't remember why, but there was some upgrade I needed, but it was like $30 a month. And I just subscribed for 1 or 2 months and got what I needed. So that's how I got all the template documents for my fundraising documents, for my corporate structure, and things of that nature. Now, it only got me so far. So those are the 2 tips, Law Depot and SCORE. If I were to give a third side tip, it's going to be do a ton of homework. And that's what's going to set aside, the mid from the great entrepreneurs, is how interested are you in the traditionally boring stuff. I myself did not pay attention to business law in school, that class. I got zero information out of that class because I didn't give it any effort. But learning it through the context of Roadrunners was actually really, really fun and interesting. And I know quite a bit about business law, and you're going to want to know those details, or else you could end up like most entrepreneurs who raise money for their business get fired from their own business. That's a true stat. Over 50% of CEOs get fired from their own company that they started by the board of directors, usually early investors. And some capital firms are worse than others. Like Sequoia, it's a very, very popular venture capital firm in Silicon Valley. They fire like 60% of their CEOs. It's really sad. And you don't want to put yourself in that position. I don't want to put myself in that position at all. So understanding these details matters a lot. But I'm not gonna lie to you and say that was enough to get me off the ground, because I raised money in an unorthodox way, which I will do another vlog about soon. But I raised around $600,000, and I did a mix of different structures, but basically I did a hard money deal, which is debt, basically. I had a little bit of equity, and this is the only time I'll ever sell equity of the company in a fundraising round. And it was really more of a cherry on top for my early investors. It was to close the fundraising round as soon as I could, so we can get this show on the road and get in the game. So we're ready to open. And it was a showing of goodwill on my side that, hey, I want these investors to be partners long term, not necessarily just pay off the debt and then get out. So anyways, right at the finish line, when I was closing the deal, the final investors who carried 57% of my round, I consider them my leads. It's a group of 3, and they covered about over half the round. They did like 340 or 350,000 all in, and I did have to hire an attorney, and they are so expensive. All right, think for 3 seconds how much an hour you think this attorney costs. I'm going to tell you. $750 an hour. So he had to redo all my corporate documents, because I have multiple legal structures that own each other, and I'm raising money through one, and the equities in different things. So I have a pretty complicated structure compared to a small business. It's definitely more of a corporation kind of setup. I have a corporation. So it was very complex, and I had made errors. Even though I was working with the SCORE mentor, I had made plenty of errors that had to be fixed, and he completely redid all my fundraising documents right at the end, and had to go get my earlier investors to re-sign the old documents. So it was kind of so yeah. Now, I think I got extremely lucky. I'm still not convinced, but I have not got a bill from that attorney yet. And it's been almost 2 months. And I'm expecting that bill to be between $8,000 and $15,000. So I haven't got the bill and I haven't heard from him, and I'm hoping like he'll just forget about me and I won't have to pay that massive legal bill. So obviously I was only able to even entertain that legal bill because I had already raised some money. So you can't do that off the rip. You got to use free tools, go raise some money with it, and then as you go to close the round or you go to get a bigger investor or whatever it might be, you can use some of the money you've raised to then hire an attorney who knows what they're doing. Now, you're not going to have the money from the early investors yet, but luckily attorneys usually take at least 30 days to bill you, so you just have to time it all. That is the hardest part of raising money and starting a business. Is it's a house of cards. If you're creating a product, you're talking to manufacturers, they want to know that you have funds to make this happen. You don't have funds, but you need to have a manufacturing partner if you want to raise money. Investors want to know that you have a partner, so you have to be careful with what you say to your investors and your partners, because you don't want to lie. You know, honesty is the best policy in business, but you also want to seem like a strong option, a strong partner. You have to time everything together, which I will do another video on as well at some point. One more legal tip I just thought of that I used that I forgot to mention is if you do have to hire an attorney, which you will at a certain point, sooner is better, but I totally get not having the funds to be able to do it. But basically, if you do a bunch of homework, you can just hire a paralegal to make sure all the wording is correct and type up the documents that you need. So you can have a paralegal do it. They're usually like between $150, $350 an hour, so they're much cheaper than lawyers. They're like less than half the price. And then maybe you can pay a lawyer 1 hour or 2 hours to look everything over. So I did this. I'm also, I had to hire a law firm to review my commercial lease, which we're still trying to sign for this site. And they understand I'm a startup and I'm, you know, trying to be frugal. So I struck up a deal with them. They're kind of a newer law firm too. So I was like, hey, why doesn't the paralegal, you know, type all this up, do most of the major reviewing, and help me redline the document as we go back and forth to the landlord on the lease. But when it comes down to the final review, that's when I want the senior partner at the firm to review it, because their hours are very expensive. So everything's done, polished, have them look it over, make sure everything's good, and they have the final say. Which law firms typically do that anyway, but they might kind of fudge the numbers a little bit, is what I assume, on how many hours are really being used. Because I worked in consulting briefly. It was the most boring, soul-sucking job ever, but I needed to do it to make a little money at the time. And everyone kind of screws their hours. There are some people who work more hours than they bill, but by and large, people are working a fraction of the hours that they bill, and that's just kind of understood by everybody involved. All right, so those are my 3 legal tips. Use a SCORE mentor, use Law Depot for templates, and hire a paralegal instead of a lawyer to save on costs. I'm about to the site now, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut to meeting the architect, or sorry, not the architect, civil engineer. How's it going?
Good, man. How you doing?
David, nice to meet you.
You too. You too.
Thanks for coming out here.
Of course, man.
This is where it all begins.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I looked around a little bit. I was trying to locate the water meters and backflow, see what's going on with that.
Yeah.
And it looks like they changed everything up over there from what the original plan was. So I mean, just looking at the back, and I don't think it's a big issue, but so I mean, that's the smaller building. That's the larger building. It looks like they never put that guy in, so that's why you got the empty lot right there.
Yeah.
And so our meter and backflow are supposed to be, I guess, to the left-hand side there, and there's nothing there.
But the line is, right?
The line, I don't think it goes there. After looking at the way they did it over here, they had 6 different meters and backflows, because you get 5 buildings there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the 6th one was supposed to come here. So they got a bank of them over there, kind of closer to that last building, where there's 6 backflows.
Yeah.
But there's 5 meters. And the one backflow that doesn't have a meter, there's a pipe right there in front of it. And so what I think they did is they went ahead and installed the backflow. They ran the line all the way to here. They didn't connect the line to the backflow because the backflow isn't connected to the meter, it connected to the public line. And so basically you got a long empty line right here that you'll connect to your building. We just got to get the MUD to approve the building, and the county to approve the building repairs. But the MUD is then going to say, okay, that's our line back there. We'll install the meter. Backflow's already there. Normally the contractor would have to take it after the meter, but you've got everything up to the site.
Okay, so we're not going to have to tear up the parking lot and put a water line through it.
According to this, no. And from that pipe being there,
Yeah.
that means that leads somewhere. And there's another pipe, like I said, it's a smaller one, but it's right in front of that backflow.
Yeah.
So I think what they did was they went ahead and put all the infrastructure in so that you don't have to do that. It's kind of ready to go, and you just connect on both ends of the line.
Okay. And what is this blue pipe? Jeff and I were wondering if it's sewage or what.
Yeah, so this is going to be basically a 6-inch sanitary marker that goes right over. So there you got a dead end 6-inch line right here.
Okay.
This cap that goes right over that manhole. And so
Yeah, you can smell it.
yeah, it's in there. It should
Okay.
be cap, but I'm sure there's some stuff getting out a little bit.
So since the store will be over there, we'll have to run a sewage line to this.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's going to have to come over here, and same thing with the water. And so we'll just run that to wherever your MVP has the plumbing coming out of.
Okay.
And connect there, and you should be good
Yeah.
to go.
Yeah.
Irrigation, according to this, is already installed as well. So that's a 3-inch irrigation line, or sorry, what is it? Sorry,
And
1.5
and that's
inch
over there,
irrigation line. So it's connected back there.
Okay.
There should be back there. So, but either way, irrigation should be taken care of everywhere out here.
Okay.
Contractor probably just needs to, while they're out here tearing stuff up and
Yeah.
and pulling all this out, just make sure that there's no heads anywhere that they're screwing up. If there are, I mean, they're gonna have to adjust it up to grade anyways.
Okay.
I don't even know if there's anything out here. I mean, the grass looks okay, but it's probably just rain that's keeping it alive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
in theory, I think we can get away without having to do irrigation.
Okay.
I think we're gonna do the argument for landscaping, saying, hey guys, this is a developed lot here. The entire overall development is already in place. We're not gonna put trees right there because
Oh, David, you just became my favorite.
we're gonna try. We're
Okay.
gonna try. They could laugh
That
at
would
us
be
and
great.
say, screw you, we want 2 trees and a bunch of shrubs.
Yeah.
We'd be like, well, it doesn't match anything else out here,
Yeah.
and we're not gonna do it to the entire property. So,
Yeah. That would be awesome.
so we'll at least attempt it,
Okay.
see if we can talk them into it.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, awesome. If not, we'll circle back
Yeah.
around.
Canopy over here. Jeff was talking about maybe putting just columns in the center versus on both sides. Do you have any thoughts on that?
He's gonna have to see if there's any like wind speed codes that it needs to meet.
Okay.
Because you don't want a hurricane coming through and just tearing the whole thing out because it wasn't built structurally well enough to hold up, and then it's flapped in the wind and then breaks over because the beams or whatever just aren't up to it.
Yeah.
I mean, you could do it, but that's not going to be under our umbrella.
Yeah. Why is it that the backflow is over there versus near our site?
Because your public water line is back there. That's where you're making your connection.
Okay.
And so what they want to do is right at that connection or as close to it, they want to have the meter. And then as close to that, they want to have the backflow preventer.
Okay.
Because the backflow preventer basically prevents any water that could be held stagnant. Say Jersey Bagel closes down, they got a sprinkler system in there.
Yeah.
And they're closed for 6 months, a year, whatever. They've still got water up in their system. And so something starts growing in there, there's a drop in pressure on the public line, suddenly that water goes flying back and then into the public line, and then it goes down the stream, gets into somebody's water fountain, and suddenly people get sick. So what they do is they want the backflow preventer as close to it as possible, because then they don't have all this dead line over here with water just sitting in it. And if for whatever reason it's not getting used, again, if you've got your backflow here, you've got nothing but open lines from your meter, from the public line meter to that backflow preventer. So you got all that stagnant water there. Again,
Yeah.
pressure drops, it goes right back into it. So they want it as close as possible to have the shortest amount of stagnant water.
Gotcha. We'll have the drive-through door as well. What would you recommend as a contingency plan when it rains really, really hard to not get flooded in there?
We just keep it as high as possible.
Okay.
And the idea is, what ideally we want to do is sheet flow everything out. So
Yeah.
keep the building as high as possible. That drive-through window is your high point,
Okay.
and then everything just goes that way.
That's great.
And back out this way.
Yeah.
And it's the finished floor is only going to be probably about 6 inches. You only really have it about curb high above the paving that you got there.
Okay.
But that's your high point for the sheet flow out. And so
Yeah.
that'll be the last spot water ever gets to.
Okay.
And at that point, it's going to head out whichever direction it needs to.
So I know I've asked you a bunch of times and trying to wrap my head around it. So what permits are we submitting on the 17th? Because I know it's not MEP. We're waiting on that still.
Yeah, so all we're going to be doing on our end is just our plans for now, our
Okay.
civil plans.
Okay.
And so we'll get that into Harris County Engineering, Harris County Flood Control, and we'll send it to the MUD to get the ball rolling with them. They are going to want to see the plumbing plans though, and so we'll get that back as a comment.
Yeah.
And at that point, I would assume plumbing's going to be ready to go.
Yeah.
We'll just tag that on with our other plans, go back in.
Yeah.
They might. And so at that point, we're on our second submittal. But since it's the first time they're seeing the plumbing plans, they may have comments on that. We have to go back in for a third submittal.
Yeah.
Mud's typically fairly quick for something small like this.
Cool.
3 or 4 week turnarounds,
Yeah.
fairly expected.
That's what we hope.
But we
for.
don't need their approval in order to get the site permit from Harris County. Harris County just wants to see the capacity letter.
All right.
So in theory, and it doesn't happen that often, but in theory, we could get the Harris County permit before we get MUD approval.
Gotcha.
Typically, they come fairly close to each other.
I'm trying to build. I have a calendar of my room with sticky notes with all the different permits. And I'm trying to learn them and like put them on there.
Yeah. So the MUD's not going to give you a permit.
Okay.
They're just going to give you a letter of no objection.
Okay.
Excuse me. They'll give you a capacity letter of no objection. I already told you about the tap fee letter, and that's the fees for them to make the tap at the public line and install the meter. And so whatever that costs them, they're going to triple it. So you don't have irrigation though, so that's good.
Yeah. Okay.
So it shouldn't be a whole lot, I don't think, but
Maybe
still,
30, 40, 50K.
I don't know if it's going to be that much.
Okay. Great.
Simply because you don't have the irrigation, so that's not adding more to it. But
Yeah.
it could be 20, 30. It just depends on whatever their rates are,
Yeah.
whatever stuff costs them at the time.
Yeah.
Every mud's a little different.
Mm-hmm.
There's some areas that just makes absolutely no sense to build. There's other areas where it's
Yeah.
a few $100.
Yeah.
But typically, it's for 1.5 inch. Probably looking 25,000 maybe, just
Okay.
for that. You're not sprinkling it, you don't have irrigation, so you should be good.
All right.
But then from the county, we're going to get on our end, should just be a site permit, site development permit. And then on the architect's end, he'll be submitting to fire code review, Harris County, and so he'll have his own permit there.
Yeah.
But that's outside of us.
So what do we need to pour concrete and scrape and grade, like to start the site plan from Harris County?
Permit. Yeah, that's the site permit.
Site
The
permit.
one that we're getting, that's what you need.
Okay.
And
Gotcha.
Architect can't get his final approval and permit from the county until our stuff is approved.
Gotcha.
So typically he's got all of his stuff buttoned up by the time we get our stuff done, and then he
Yeah.
goes in for one last review
Yeah.
and approval.
Yeah.
But as soon as
Yeah.
you have ours, you can come out here, start clearing all this stuff,
Cool.
moving dirt around, having fun.
Alrighty.
So,
I think we're gonna need a pole transformer. That's what Jeff said. So we're looking into that.
yeah, start talking to Centerpoint right away.
Yeah.
Get that figured out.
Cool. All right, just met with our civil engineer. Cool guy. We really bonded over Star Wars at the end. He had a Mandalorian sticker on his truck that I saw. And I was like, do you like Star Wars? And he pulled up a full Mandalorian tattoo on his shoulder and side of his arm. Super cool. So it's always interesting to me to see the difference in professional relationship when you're able to relate on a common interest. Like before that, and you might, as you can probably tell in the video, things are a little stiff, a little, just purely business, right? A little tense even, and that's usually how it always is. That's usually a presence that I bring, and I'm okay with it. I don't overtly try to bring a very super warm energy, because it's not necessarily natural for me. I'm a little bit stoic, But I do like reaching a level in a relationship, especially as quickly as I can, of showing that warmth. Just when it comes to business, I'm pretty straightforward. But yeah, we bonded over Star Wars. That was good. Wrote him a check, talked about the site plan. He's submitting permits for our site, which is the permits we need to break ground next Friday, which is awesome news. That means the ball is rolling. We're getting closer and closer to building the store and being open, but have some other hurdles that are going on right now. I won't get into it right now because this video is already probably too long, but always hurdles you're having to face in business, always the next challenge, the next impossible mountain that just seems to completely have stopped progress. But we're running into a little bit of issues with basically the lease still, but it's not the landlord's fault. It's not the lease's problem. We got I'm getting some SBA loans to help with construction, and basically that slowed everything down. So that's pretty much it. Hope you enjoyed this episode. We scale.